In the quiet town of Crestwood, William Hartley's mansion stood out like a sore thumb. The 60-year-old reclusive millionaire peered out of his window, his eyes scanning the town below. His expression was a mix of sadness and longing, a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings of his home. Meanwhile, in a public square, a group of mothers huddled together, their voices hushed but urgent. Linda, a protective mother, led the conversation, her brow furrowed with concern. "I saw him with Zoe again yesterday," she said, her voice laced with worry. The other mothers exchanged glances, their imaginations running wild with speculation about William's relationship with the 12-year-old girl. As the rumors spread like wildfire, Linda's concern for her own daughter, Clara, grew exponentially. She couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right about William Hartley and his interactions with the town's children. Later that day, William was spotted in the park with Zoe. They sat on a bench, hunched over a math textbook. William patiently explained a complex problem, his finger tracing the lines of an equation. Zoe's eyes lit up with understanding, a smile spreading across her face as she grasped the concept. However, their innocent interaction didn't go unnoticed. Passers-by slowed their pace, casting suspicious glances at the unlikely pair. Parents pulled their children closer, whispering warnings as they hurried past. The atmosphere in the park grew tense, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging heavy in the air. As William and Zoe remained oblivious to the stares, focused on their math problem, the seeds of distrust continued to grow among the townspeople. The simple act of tutoring had become fuel for the fire of suspicion that was rapidly engulfing Crestwood. Linda, driven by her growing anxiety, decided to take action. She organized a meeting with the other residents to discuss what she perceived as the threat William posed to their community. The town hall was packed, the air thick with tension and whispered conversations. Standing at the front of the room, Linda addressed the crowd. "We need to protect our children," she declared, her voice firm and unwavering. "William Hartley's behavior is suspicious, and we can't ignore it any longer." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. As the meeting progressed, neighbors shared their own stories and suspicions. Mrs. Johnson recounted how she'd seen William buying candy at the local store, while Mr. Peterson swore he'd spotted him lurking near the school playground. Each story, no matter how innocuous, took on a sinister tone in the charged atmosphere. Mr. Thompson, an elderly resident known for his no-nonsense attitude, stood up. "I say we call the police," he suggested, his voice gruff with determination. "Let them sort this out." His words were met with nods of approval and a smattering of applause. The meeting concluded with a sense of unity in their perceived mission to protect the town's children. As people filed out, their conversations were filled with plans and speculation about what actions to take next. Linda lingered behind, her resolve stronger than ever. She looked at the concerned faces around her and made a silent vow. No matter what it took, she would ensure that nothing happened to Clara or any other child in Crestwood. The image of William and Zoe in the park flashed through her mind, fueling her determination. She was ready to do whatever it took to keep her community safe, even if it meant confronting William Hartley himself. The next day, 2 police officers arrived at William Hartley's mansion. William opened the door, his face a mixture of confusion and politeness. "Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?" he asked, inviting them inside. The living room was filled with books and scientific equipment. The officers exchanged glances before the senior officer spoke. "Mr. Hartley, we've received some concerns from the community about your relationship with a young girl named Zoe. Can you explain the nature of your interactions with her?" William's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Of course," he replied calmly. "Zoe is a brilliant student. I've been tutoring her in advanced mathematics and science. She has exceptional potential that isn't being fully developed in her current school curriculum." The officers listened, their expressions neutral. "And why did you choose to tutor Zoe specifically?" the junior officer asked, his pen poised over a notepad. William sighed. "I noticed her struggling with a math problem in the park one day. When I offered help, her eagerness to learn was evident. I saw a bit of myself in her, a child with a passion for knowledge, but without the resources to pursue it fully." Despite William's explanation, The officers remained skeptical. They asked more probing questions about his background, his reasons for moving to Crestwood, and his interactions with other children in town. As the interrogation continued, a crowd began to gather outside William's house. Neighbors whispered among themselves, their imaginations running wild. Linda stood at the forefront, her arms crossed, watching the police cruiser parked in the driveway. The officers left William's house after an hour, their faces unreadable. They didn't share any information with the waiting crowd, which only fueled more speculation. As night fell, the residents of Crestwood gathered again, this time in hushed groups on porches and in living rooms, sharing theories and concerns about what the police visit might mean. While the town buzzed with speculation, Zoe sat in her room, her face etched with worry. She clutched her math textbook to her chest, torn between her love for learning and the growing tension she felt around her. Unable to contain her anxiety any longer, she decided to visit William. At William's house, Zoe poured out her concerns. "Mr. Hartley, everyone's talking about us. They think you're bad," she said, her voice trembling. "My friends at school are asking weird questions, and their parents won't let them talk to me anymore." William listened patiently, his face a mask of calm concern. When Zoe finished, he leaned forward in his chair. "Zoe, people often fear what they don't understand," he explained gently. "What matters is that we know the truth. Don't let their opinions discourage you from pursuing your passion for learning." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Education has the power to change lives, Zoe. It changed mine. No matter what happens, hold on to that truth." Zoe nodded, feeling slightly reassured but still uneasy about the situation. Meanwhile, across town, Linda sat at her computer, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. She had spent hours researching William Hartley's past, determined to uncover any skeletons in his closet. To her surprise, she found numerous articles about his achievements as a scientist years ago. One headline caught her eye: "Brilliant physicist William Hartley disappears from public eye." The article detailed his groundbreaking work in quantum mechanics and his sudden withdrawal from the scientific community. Linda frowned, conflicted. The man described in these articles seemed a far cry from the predator she had imagined. Yet, her maternal instincts still screamed caution. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to William's story than met the eye. As she closed her laptop, Linda's resolve hardened. She needed to get to the bottom of this, not just for Clara's sake, but for all the children in Crestwood. The question that nagged at her was, who was the real William Hartley? William Hartley, aware of the growing tensions in Crestwood, decided to take a bold step. He announced an open house event at his mansion, inviting all the townspeople to see firsthand what he had been doing with Zoe and other local children. Invitations were sent out, causing a stir in the community. Some residents scoffed at the idea, while others saw it as an opportunity to gather more evidence against William. Linda, however, found herself in a dilemma. "Mom, can we please go?" Clara begged, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Everyone at school is talking about it." Linda hesitated, torn between her protective instincts and her daughter's enthusiasm. "I don't know, sweetie. It might not be safe," she said, uncertainty clear in her voice. "But how will we know if we don't go?" Clara persisted. "Plus, you always say we shouldn't judge people without knowing them." Linda sighed, realizing the truth in her daughter's words. "All right," she conceded. "We'll go, but we stick together the whole time, okay?" On the day of the event, a steady stream of people made their way to William's mansion. The atmosphere was tense, with whispered conversations and suspicious glances exchanged among the attendees. William greeted each guest at the door, his smile warm but nervous. "Welcome," he said, ushering them inside. "I'm glad you could come. Please, feel free to look around and ask any questions you might have." The interior of the mansion was a far cry from what many had imagined. Instead of lavish decorations, the rooms were filled with educational materials, science experiments, and art projects. In one corner, a group of children huddled around a microscope, their faces alight with wonder. As the townspeople moved through the house, their initial skepticism began to waver. Linda watched closely, her hand firmly gripping Clara's, as William interacted with the children. patiently explaining complex concepts and encouraging their curiosity. The event was set to challenge the town's preconceptions, but would it be enough to change their minds about William Hartley? As the open house continued, William gathered everyone in the main hall for a demonstration. "Today, I'd like to show you what these brilliant young minds are capable of," he announced, gesturing to a group of children, including Zoe, who stood nearby. William presented a series of complex mathematical and scientific problems on a large screen. One by one, the children stepped forward, tackling equations and concepts that seemed far beyond their years. The audience watched in stunned silence, their skepticism slowly giving way to amazement. When it was Zoe's turn, she approached the board with confidence. William presented her with a particularly challenging physics problem. Zoe's eyes lit up as she began to work through it, her hand moving swiftly across the board. Within minutes, she had solved the problem, turning to face the crowd with a shy smile. The room erupted in applause. Parents looked at their children with newfound wonder, questioning if they too might have hidden potential waiting to be unlocked. Linda stood at the back, her eyes wide. She turned to the mother standing next to her, Mrs. Thompson, whose son had just solved a complex algebra problem. "I had no idea Tommy was capable of this," Mrs. Thompson whispered, her voice filled with awe and a hint of regret. As the demonstration concluded, William addressed the crowd once more. His voice was passionate as he spoke about the importance of nurturing young minds and providing opportunities for all children, regardless of their background. "Every child has the potential for greatness," William said, his eyes scanning the room. "It's our responsibility to help them discover and develop their talents. Education is the key that unlocks doors to a brighter future." The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. Where there had once been suspicion and fear, there was now a growing sense of admiration and respect. Parents began to approach William, asking questions about his methods and expressing interest in having their own children participate in his programs. As the event drew to a close, the residents of Crestwood left with much to ponder. The narrative they had constructed about William Hartley was beginning to crumble, replaced by a new understanding of his true intentions and the impact he was having on their community's children. As the crowd began to disperse, a small group of neighbors approached William. "Mr. Hartley," one of them began, "we owe you an apology. What you're doing here is truly remarkable." William nodded graciously, relief evident on his face. Linda hung back, watching the interactions from a distance. She felt a whirlwind of emotions, amazement at what she'd witnessed, shame for her rush to judgment, and a lingering sense of caution she couldn't quite shake. Her eyes darted between William and the children, trying to reconcile the man she'd feared with the dedicated educator she'd just seen in action. Zoe, still buzzing with excitement from her successful demonstration, ran up to William. "Thank you so much, Mr. Hartley," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. "I never thought I could do something like that in front of everyone." William smiled warmly. "You've always had that ability, Zoe. I just helped you see it in yourself." He looked around at the other children, who were chatting animatedly about the problems they'd solved. "This is why I do what I do," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. Sensing that this was her moment, Linda took a deep breath and approached William. "Mr. Hartley," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I'd like to speak with you privately, if I may." William nodded, leading her to a quiet corner of the room. Linda steeled herself, then spoke. "I've been one of your harshest critics," she admitted. "I need to understand. Why are you really here in Crestwood? What's your story?" William's expression softened. He was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "I came here seeking peace," he began, "but I found a purpose instead." He went on to share his own history, a childhood marked by poverty and lack of educational opportunities, his struggle to pursue his passion for science, and his eventual success in the field. "When I saw children here with that same spark I once had, I couldn't stand by and do nothing," he explained. "I had the means to help, so I did." As William spoke, Linda felt her last reservations begin to crumble. The man before her wasn't the threat she had imagined, but someone who had faced his own struggles and was now dedicated to preventing others from facing the same challenges. The conversation marked a turning point, not just for Linda, but for the entire community of Crestwood. The truth about William Hartley was finally coming to light, challenging everyone to confront their own biases and preconceptions. In the days following the open house, Linda found herself unable to shake off the impact of her conversation with William. Driven by a mix of guilt and newfound respect, she decided to take action. She organized another community meeting, but this time with a very different agenda. The town hall was packed once again, but the atmosphere was markedly different from the previous gathering. Linda stood at the front, her posture more relaxed but her voice just as determined. "I called this meeting to discuss something important, the value of education and the opportunity we have right here in Crestwood," she began. She invited William to speak, and he took the podium with a quiet confidence. He shared stories of his students' progress, showing before and after photos of their work and reading letters from parents who had seen remarkable changes in their children. "Education isn't just about math and science," William explained. "It's about fostering curiosity, critical thinking, and self-confidence. These skills can change the trajectory of a child's life." As William spoke, the audience listened intently. Many were moved by the transformations they saw in the children they knew. Mr. Thompson, who had previously suggested calling the police, raised his hand. "I was wrong about you, Mr. Hartley," he admitted. "How can we help support your work?" This question opened the floodgates. Residents began sharing ideas on how to expand William's program. A local business owner offered to donate computers. A retired teacher volunteered her time. Even the mayor, who had remained neutral during the controversy, pledged to look into grants for after-school programs. Linda watched in amazement as the community she had once rallied against William now came together to support him. She felt a mix of emotions: pride in her neighbor's change of heart, regret for her earlier actions, and excitement for what this could mean for Crestwood's children. As the meeting concluded, there was a palpable sense of unity and purpose in the room. The residents of Crestwood were no longer divided by suspicion, but united in their commitment to nurturing the potential of their youngest members. William, overwhelmed by the support, stood quietly at the back of the room. For the first time since he'd arrived in Crestwood, he felt truly at home. The path ahead was clear. Together, they would build something remarkable. In the weeks that followed, Crestwood underwent a remarkable transformation. The community's newfound focus on education and inclusivity breathed new life into the town. Williams Learning Center, once viewed with suspicion, became a hub of activity and innovation. Linda, in a complete turnaround, became one of Williams' most vocal supporters. She spearheaded a fundraising campaign to improve the center's facilities. "We're not just investing in a building," she told potential donors. "We're investing in our children's futures." The campaign was a resounding success. Donations poured in from local businesses and residents alike. Even those who couldn't contribute financially offered their time and skills. The old warehouse that housed Williams' programs was renovated, fitted with modern technology and vibrant learning spaces. William, overwhelmed by the support, expanded his curriculum. He began offering open classes for adults in the evenings, sharing his knowledge of science, technology, and critical thinking. These classes became unexpectedly popular, with parents and grandparents sitting alongside their children, all eager to learn. As word of Crestwood's educational renaissance spread, the town began to attract attention. Families from neighboring communities enrolled their children in Williams' programs. Educational experts visited to study the town's approach. There was even talk of replicating the model in other cities. However, not everyone was won over. A small group of residents remained skeptical, their distrust of William deeply ingrained. They watched the town's transformation with wary eyes, convinced that there must be some hidden agenda behind William's generosity. One evening, as William locked up the learning center after a late class, he noticed a figure lurking in the shadows. It was Mr. Peterson, one of his most vocal critics. "We're watching you, Hartley," Peterson growled. "Your fancy classes don't fool everyone." William sighed, realizing that despite all the progress, some wounds would take longer to heal. He knew that changing minds was a slow process, but he remained committed to his mission. As he walked home under the starlit sky, he reflected on how far they'd come and the challenges that still lay ahead. The story of Crestwood's transformation was far from over, but William felt a sense of hope. With each child whose life he touched, each adult who embraced learning anew. He was building a legacy that would outlast any lingering suspicions. The annual fundraising gala for the Learning Center had become Crestwood's most anticipated event. This year, the town hall was decorated elegantly, filled with proud parents, excited children, and supportive community members. William, dressed in a modest suit, mingled with the guests, his face beaming with pride at how far they'd come. As William took the stage to give his speech, a commotion at the back of the room caught everyone's attention. A man, disheveled and out of breath, pushed his way through the crowd. "William!" he called out, his voice cracking with emotion. The room fell silent. William squinted, trying to make out the figure in the dim light. As recognition dawned on his face, he paled visibly. "Thomas!" he whispered into the microphone, his hand trembling. The man, Thomas, made his way to the stage. "It's me, brother," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been looking for you for years." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. William, known for his composure, seemed at a loss for words. Linda, standing near the front, stepped forward. "William, what's going on?" she asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Thomas turned to address the crowd. "My brother isn't who you think he is," he began, causing a wave of murmurs. "The William you know escaped a life of abuse and neglect. He changed his name, built a new life from nothing. The money he has? He earned every penny, overcoming odds you can't imagine." He pulled out a folder and handed it to William. "These are the documents proving your emancipation, your legal name change. You're free, William. You don't have to hide anymore." William, his hands shaking, opened the folder. Years of tension seemed to leave his body as he read. Looking up at the crowd, he saw not judgment, but compassion in their eyes. I never meant to deceive anyone," William said, his voice thick with emotion. "I came here to escape my past, to find peace. But in helping these children, in being part of this community, I found so much more. I found purpose and healing." As William's story unfolded, the last vestiges of suspicion in the community melted away. The man they had once feared was revealed to be a survivor, someone who had overcome tremendous odds to create a better life not just for himself, but for others. The gala transformed into a celebration of resilience and second chances. As the night wore on, residents approached William one by one, offering words of support and admiration. Even Mr. Peterson, his staunchest critic, came forward to shake his hand. In that moment, Crestwood truly became William's home, and he, at last, found the acceptance and understanding he had sought for so long. The town's journey from suspicion to compassion was complete, leaving its residents forever changed by the power of empathy and the transformative nature of education.